Hello friends, my name is SleepG and this is a very special video, one that I definitely did not foresee myself making. So a good while ago, a friend of mine who goes by Kurozale online landed a job at Face Punch. For anybody who doesn't know, Kurozale basically made the most popular serious role-playing game mode for Garry's mod, which is Clockwork, which Half-Life 2 roleplay most notably runs on, and a bunch of other cool game mods. I've known the guy almost 10 years now, and the other day he decided to drop a surprise sandbox key into my DMs. Making me one of, I think, less than 500 people to have access to the game right now. I know right now they are rolling out more keys publicly, and I think there's a lottery you have to enter or something like that, but at least for now anyways, I remain one of the elite few people to actually have the game. I wanted to make a video on this game like a week ago, but I've only just now got a new XLR cable because my old one sounded really fucked. But now that I do have it, you know we have to check this game out. So here we are at the main menu, and yes, this is a hot dog man. His name's apparently Terry. I don't know if the community gave him that name or if Garry himself did, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. So here you see, we've already got a bunch of game modes available already, even though that there's only a certain amount of people that have actually got access to the developers tools for the games now. And already, we're seeing some familiar faces. We got Trouble in Terry's Town, which is obviously just TTT. Going up, we've got Jailbreak. We've got some like Among Us type games, Murder, all that good shit from Garry's mod. But for now, let's jump into the only game mode that matters, which is the name of the game, Sandbox. When I first installed the game, I did see that I already had like a bunch of maps installed. All of these maps pretty much came with the game, and I have no idea why. But for right now, we're only going to be checking out Construct, because Construct is, Garry's mod map, and apparently they've made some changes to it, so well, it kind of resembles Construct. I saw a video a long time ago, and it was about like the sort of scopophobic eeriness of playing like a Source game by yourself. Like, when you're on a map like this and you always just kind of feel like someone's watching you. And after like 2,700 hours of Garry's mod, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel it myself sometimes. Even in like Halo 3, I remember reading like a bunch of creepypastas about like sightings of Cortana inside Foundry and stuff like that. If you loaded into like an empty Forge world, you'd sometimes see her on like the windows and shit, and it just used to creep me out all the time. I don't know if it's the fact that I'm recording a video or if it's the fact that this game generally just looks a lot nicer than Garry's mod does in terms of its rendering, but I'm not really getting the same feeling right now, which is, I guess, kind of both good and a bad thing. It is part of the charm that comes with Source games. So if we hold Q and open the props list, we can see that it's a bit limited right now. We don't really have access to like all of the Half-Life 2 props that you get in like Garry's mod, for instance. This is all just stuff like the developers have made, or I guess stuff that they've ported over from Rust. I haven't played enough Rust to like recognize which ones, but like this kind of looks Rustish. And if we go into the entities tab, it's pretty much the same. We can spawn in a drone. Don't know what it does, but it's there. Spawning lamps, lights, balloons, which is pretty cool. A directional gravity entity, and if you push this over, everything will just start flying up in the air, which is pretty hilarious if you put yourself in a car, because you'll just go flying outside the bounds of the map. We've also got some tools returning from Garry's mod. We've got weld, rope, thrusters, wheels. As far as I'm aware, like, you can spawn wheels on stuff, but like there's no way to actually like use them yet, purely because there's no like numpad controls or anything like that, so there's no way to actually get these to work. But I mean, you can add a thruster to it and it'll go. It's not what I expected it to do at all. I expected it to fly away with the balloon and it would have made a really funny clip, but we've also got some of the weapons from Rust. I mean, I know this is from Rust. The shotgun looks familiar. I don't know if it's from Rust or not. And obviously you've got the pistol, which you've seen already. It's actually the pistol. The pistol's actually the model for the Fizz gun and the tool gun and the grav gun. I'm really surprised they didn't just port over the Garry's mod tool gun. I always thought that was one of the most like iconic entities from the Garry's mod franchise. But in hindsight, I guess it's more just because they don't really want this game to be a Garry's mod 2. The developers have said numerous times, don't go into this expecting a sequel to Garry's mod. And, I kind of agree. Not that it's really like a matter of contention. If the developer says it's not Garry's mod 2, then it's not Garry's mod 2. But at the same time, they are making a spiritual successor. And so comparisons are going to be made, and it's pretty much unavoidable. Playing this game, in terms of physics, it's basically just the Source engine, but better. Movement and aiming still feels great. Items react realistically when you like throw them around, which is pretty cool. It's the Source engine, you know? We don't have any ragdolls or NPCs in the game yet, so we can't exactly see if that really hilarious ragdoll sound gets made whenever you try and thrust one into a corner. Obviously, we'll be expecting ragdolls to be in the game at some point. I mean, I'd be really surprised if they weren't. So I'm 22 years old. I turned 23 this September, and if you're around my age and you grew up with video games, I'm willing to bet very safe money that at some point in your life you've played Grand Theft Auto 3. Well, my friend, prepare to take a trip down memory lane because we have Grand Theft Auto 3 in Sandbox, and my god, is it fuck ugly. I don't know what it is about Grand Theft Auto 3 that impresses me so much. Even if you play it today, it's still very visually appealing. But there's just something about seeing it right now in full HD without all of the post-processing and the smog of the Rage engine, and it just feels like I've finally put my glasses on and I'm seeing like the world in detail for the first time, and I'm just horrified. But I mean, shit, it's a map from 2001. I can't really complain too much. It's funny, I remember seeing one of the original dev posts for this game, like a couple of years ago now, I want to say, where they posted about porting the entirety of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas over into Sandbox engine, and man, I remember just being so excited for like the possibilities of like what that could mean. It was kind of like my first glimpse into the future of like what this engine can do. Actually, you know, I say that, I think at the time they was still running on the Unreal Engine, but I mean, still, like that kind of scale in a game, like that's in this sort of like sandbox nature. And actually seeing it for the first time it's really impressive to me. You know, Source 1 has a pretty hard limitation on brushes. If you've ever made a map for the Source engine and you had to like fight with its compiler to try and like fit everything you wanted to fit onto your map, then you know, I feel you, bro. I've been there. I used to be in like a lot of serious role-playing communities back when I was playing Garry's Mod, and one of like the big complaints that I'd hear time and time again was just map size. You know, it was really only a complaint that I'd only ever hear if I was playing in like a big community. For smaller communities, it was never really an issue. But for big communities, if you had too small a map, you know, you couldn't really do anything without other people like interrupting. And it, you know, people would be like finding each other all the time, and it's just not very good if you're trying to have like an immersive experience and people keep on coming up to you. If your server had like 40 or 50 people playing at one time and it was on a small map, I remember combat was really tedious because, you know, people would just randomly start joining in because you had to type everything out. It wasn't like we were using microphones or anything like that because, you know, using microphones kind of broke the immersion, and some people weren't really like, you know, into using their voices for roleplay, which is like, you know, fine. I used to run a community called Eve back in the day, back in like 2015. And God, saying that makes me feel fucking old. And I remember we had that kind of player base, you know, like 40 to 50 people playing at one time. I remember it used to be pretty hard for me to get into the server sometimes, and we were running it on a map called GM_Atomic. And if you've played Garry's Mod, you know, for any length of time, I'm willing to bet that you've at least seen GM Atomic. It's one of like the most high rated maps on the workshop, and it is fucking tiny. And about a month or two in, we were absorbed by a larger community called Lazarus, and they actually had a team of really talented developers. One of them, Johnny Guitar, is actually working on a game called Dead Matter at the minute. I highly recommend you go check it out. It looks like it's going to be a great project. But basically, they were making like a custom version of the game mode that we were playing, which was like a Fallout New Vegas game mode. And I remember they had like custom UI and custom models. But the most important thing that I remember from it was basically the entire map of New Vegas, but like shrunken down to fit into Garry's Mod. And like it shouldn't have been possible. Like I have no idea how they managed to get that to compile, but they did. And the map looked great, it played great, and to boot it all off, you know, it was a really big community. They had like 128 players, I think, at one point on the server at the same time. I don't know what host they had to go to get that kind of player base, but I remember I was an admin on that server, and it was like the first time that I'd ever seen anything like it. You know, a map of that scale with, you know, people to actually fill it all up. It was incredible. Sadly, the community was very toxic. Some of the admins were very power hungry. And after about a month, I think it can't have been any more than 2, the server did eventually die, and I never saw a project like that again. But now, you know, seeing like this level of scale, like the entirety of Liberty City inside of Sandbox, makes me excited for the future of, you know, like not just like the role-playing community, because, you know, I mean, even if you were to just play Dark RP on this map, that would be pretty cool. Just the community in general who are going to get their hands on this, and they're going to do something really cool with it. Switching over to Vice City now, just for shits and giggles, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, you know, in fact, I think I'm more excited. I'm definitely more excited about what the community does with the game than what the actual Face Punch developers do with the game. If you've ever visited my Steam profile, you'll know that I do have a map up on the workshop, and it's an edit of GM Atomic, which I mentioned earlier, for another iteration of my role-playing community, which I made like back in 2018. And so I do have some limited experience with the source tools. You know, I've used Wallworm, I've used Milkshape, which is like an archaic model software. I've used VTF Edit. But even though my knowledge of the Source 1 tools are primitive at best, I can tell you right now that the Source 2 tools are fucking incredible. I don't really talk about much in videos, but I do have an art station. I do a lot of 3D art, primarily in Unreal Engine these days. Although I did spend 3 years using Unity for my degree, and I was really excited to tinker around with Source 2, mostly because I know that Source 2 is being developed for, you know, like modern industry standard software tools like 3ds Max, and you know, their associated file formats like FBX, OBJ, stuff like that. So over the weekend, I took a crack at trying to import one of my levels that I made in Unreal Engine to Source, and you know, it was all in all pretty easy. The community were very helpful in answering any of my questions if I ever felt like I needed to ask something. But overall, you know, everything's here. I managed to get everything in like the space of like 2 days. And here we are in game. It looks pretty dog shit. I'm not gonna lie, there's some clear light map problems going on here. Like, I don't know if it just has something to do with the way I've built it or the way I've placed the lights or what. But just the fact that I've made something in Sandbox, well, just the fact that I made something, oh, I didn't set up collisions there. Just the fact that I've made something in Unreal Engine and I can port it to Sandbox and it works is just mind-blowing to me, man. Obviously, even if the lighting were to not be totally 100% fucked, then, you know, there's no real way that I could, like, recreate the materials or anything one-to-one, or the lighting, purely just because of the way that each engine renders things out, and I use, like, a much more robust master material in Unreal Engine, which I'm not going to be able to get access to here. So originally, this piece was done for my master's degree, and the theme was 3D optimization. And in the vein of that, I made it so that all of these little modular pieces had no back faces. They were all just one-sided polygons. And what that basically means is that if I fly out, you can just see straight through like you can here. And in UE4, it's kind of a problem to do this because you can get what's called light bleeding, which is essentially where lighting from outside can bleed through to the surface. It's kind of like holding a piece of paper up to the sun versus holding a book up to the sun, if that's literally any help in visualizing what I mean. So to get around this in UE4, I had to put like a bunch of boxes around it to prevent this from happening. But in Source 2, I don't need to do that. It's great. You know, we look at Garry's mod and we see all of the custom content that gets made for the game and all of the game modes and maps, and it's all fucking incredible, but it's all held back by its age. Source 1, while it's still an incredible engine, is old as shit. It's outdated, archaic, and while the community of very talented developers who still work with Source to this day have managed to use its limitations to fuel their creativity and find unique ways around certain things, there'll always be barriers in the way that prevent people from truly being able to make whatever they want with the engine. And that all ends when this game releases. Now, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Source 2 is limitless, but it is far and away easier to use and more limitless than Source 1 is. Mostly because, you know, it's actually being developed for modern hardware and for developers who are using modern tools. It still has its own model format, but converting an FBX to a V model is a super easy, simple process compared to what it is in Source 1. You know, you no longer have to like jump through hoops to go from making and texturing a model to actually getting it and seeing it in game. This game isn't running on Lua anymore either, it's running on C#, and that alone has a lot of implications. But basically the short story is that C# is just generally a more robust language. It's built on the .NET framework, which means that, you know, it's just, you have a lot more access to different libraries. And so, you know, the original limitations of the Garry's Mod code base and, you know, like the Lua API are just going to be things of the past. I mean, look here, me and Nathan, who you might recognize from a number of my videos, are playing 8-Ball Pool on Sandbox, and it plays better than 8-Ball Pool does. Or this game, you know, a Hotline Miami type game. You know, you'd never see this kind of thing in Garry's Mod without a whole lot of jank to come with it. I mean, like, this is the kind of thing that I'd expect to see, like, on the Steam, like, indie store, you know? Like, definitely not on a game like Sandbox, there's not really that much more to say about the game for now, I guess. I've shown you just all about all there is to see in the props menu and everything like that. Once the game does go public, you know, I'm definitely going to be making videos with my friends about it and checking out the other game modes. I would have done a lot more of checking out the game modes for this video, but unfortunately a lot of them are multiplayer focused, like that speed dial one that I've just showed you guys, or the 8-ball pool one. Sadly, you know, there aren't really that many people playing the game right now because although they are still handing out keys a lot more frequently these days, it is still a closed beta as far as I'm aware. And so trying to get like a group of people to play some of the games with isn't really going to be possible. But yeah, man, I'm super stoked for the future of this game. I'd like to extend a thank you to Kurozel for the key, for the community who helped me get all of my stuff into the engine and answered my questions. And you guys for checking out this video. I do have a lot more stuff on the way. At the minute, I'm very bogged down with the final stretch of my master's degree, and I am due to start work at Codemasters next month, which I'm very excited about. Nervous also. But hopefully, once I get this degree over with and I actually manage to start my 9 to 5, then I'll have a lot more free time in the day, rather than just being a 24-hour slave to my uni work. And hopefully I'll be able to get a lot more done. So be sure to subscribe already if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you guys all again soon.
I probably thought you were going to bounce that straight into the pot there. Right. No! 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 What have I done? What have I done?
What? You kidding me?
Oh, you fucking noob!
No,
You fucking
what?
noob!
How the fuck? Mate, call you popping.
Top left, top left.
Oh! What? You lose. I got fucking cheated more like.